So, on this episode, I want us to talk about two clubs who have been sort of the major focus of the transfer window in the past week. First, Manchester United, and then second, we'll talk about Newcastle because I want to understand what is happening in their transfer windows, analyze whether or not Benjamin Šeško is the right striker option for Manchester United, or it was just because Newcastle put up a bid, they were coerced into showing that they are not losing out to Newcastle and went to buy another Hoyland replica. Or what exactly are they trying to do, and how different is it from their signings in the final season of Eric Ten Hag? And so on this episode, it would be more of a deep dive into the scenarios around the signings that United are making, but also a bit more in depth about Newcastle and why they are struggling to get the kind of players that they want. So, Erasmus, let's start with Manchester United. Out of all the options that they had, in fact, right before they made the Sesko deal confirmation, they had Juventus offer them Vlahović on a silver platter, and they said, no, thank you very much. We already have an agreement with Sesko, and Sesko is the only player that we want. And I'm wondering whether out of all the options that were on the table, Benjamin Šeško is the right option for Manchester United because they had Oli Watkins, they had Vlahović, they had Isak, they had Nicholas Jackson, and still they went. In fact, they even have Hoyland in house. They still went ahead and signed Benjamin Šeško. So it's quite a simple but somehow loaded question. Is he the right striker option for United?
Yeah, hello to all of the viewers. Once again, like I said, we're moving into new audiences, so it's back. It's time to introduce the habits back. But I mean,
Comments
before I go
reserved.
in, before I go into the details of if Benjamin Šeško is the right striker for Manchester United, I think it's important to put some context around the kind of season or the kind of window that Manchester United is having as a whole.
Yeah.
And coming off the back of last season, where we know that the team was awash with many troubles, the key thing that everyone kept pointing out was the attacking unit, right? They let
Yeah.
go of some very, very key players within the squad, which is Rashford, Anthony, Sancho, Garnacho, a host of them that either due to compatibility issues or due to things like attitude and other forms of drama, they were not included within the squad. And these are very, very good players. In fact, you could argue that the players who were left out of the squad were better than those who were put on it. And unfortunately, some of the ones who also had a bit of quality who could help out in the attack, like Ahmad and Mason Mount, were frequently injured, which meant that the attack that United kept on fielding week in, week out, you would say it's not ideal. You would
Yeah.
say it's not a squad that they would want to have on the pitch on a week by week basis,
Yeah.
which means that within the summer window, they had an opportunity now to bring in people that they like, right? And if the attacking numbers which they had, which got them in 15th, was one which was very, very poor, then we need to be able to consider who is coming in versus who they are replacing to see whether this is a good fit or this is an improvement or not. And if I look at like for like, especially within those positions where they played Joshua Zexi, they play Bruno Fernandes a bit, they play Ahmad sometimes, and I look at the incoming of Cunha, Mbuemo, and now Sesko, I would say that that is a massive improvement, and it's something that they should be delighted by, whether whether we do that sort of analysis as to whether they are quality, they are class or not. I think it immediately improves the squad, that attacking unit. Now, as to whether Benjamin Šeško himself fits the bill
Yeah.
of a United attacker, I think more where the question lies maybe more is in whether he fits Amorim's system, because Amorim's system is one which he has enforced and he has insisted on playing, the reason to which most of the attackers I mentioned have been put out of the project because they are more of wingers than attackers. You'd
Yeah.
say that the recent one that we know about was Victor Gyökeres. And this was a huge lad, very, very mobile forward who could carry the ball, was very, very athletic, who could hold up play and could involve others in the play, but also could finish. I think Sesko is on that line. I don't think he's the fully developed product yet, but I think he has the athleticism. Athleticism. Isn't it funny that I always struggle with that? Athleticism to
Yeah.
be able to execute that role, especially in the same way. So I think there's promise. However, the downside always with United is that promise is never enough, right? There are always questions as with regards to his experience, his level of experience, making the transition from the Bundesliga also into the English Premier League, where it is quite physical. Although he looks like he's a massive guy. This guy could touch a basketball rim with his foot. I don't know if you've seen that video. So he's a massive,
No.
very athletic. So no, he's an athlete. So I think in terms of physicality, he just looks like he was made or born for the Premier League, and therefore you would hope that his development will make that suffice. However, like I said, would he get the patience of the crowd? Would he get the patience of the audience within Manchester to be able to develop? It looks like it's a club that needs people to come in and deliver now. But I think that is not just a question for him. It's a question to do with the entire attacking unit, which I think generally has improved.
No, I mean, so you sort of answered the question without answering the question, and
Yes.
you've given a
That's
good
that's
background
that's
to.
the job. That's the job. That's
No,
the
that's not the
podcast.
job. That's not
If,
the
if
job.
you
That's
came
not
here,
the
we came.
podcast. That's
If
not
A
the
is equal to
podcast.
B, you listen.
No,
We'll close.
no.
And
You can do all your background analysis and still answer my question. You chose not to answer the question because the question I asked was very specific. I wasn't asking whether Sesko was an upgrade on Hoyland or Zegzi. I wasn't asking whether Cunha and Mbeumo were upgrades on who Ahmad and Anthony and Garnacho and the rest that they were left with. I was asking a specific question. United had striker options to go for. They had Watkins, they had Vlahović, Dusan Vlahović. They had what do you call it? They had Isak. They had I keep forgetting your striker's name.
did
Why?
they have
Why? Nicholas Jackson. No, Isak was on the market. So these are strikers who are on the market you can go for, right? These are strikers you can go for.
you just want to
When
put me in trouble with the Manchester United
no,
fans?
no. I asked you a simple question. You evaded the question. I'm bringing the question back. It's the start of the podcast, and you're evading questions already. How can you start like this? So it's a simple question. Do you think out of all the options, because this is not a comparison between Sesko and pre-existing United players, it's Sesko and the players they had on the market when they have the money to go out and pursue players. And I saw a post recently which said when United were told to go for Harry Kane for 100 million, they said, nah, they would never spend 100 million on Harry Kane and went and spent what? Was it 70 or 80 or 90
80
even
million.
on Rasmus Højlund? 2 seasons fast forward, Kane has scored more than 100 goals for Bayern Munich, and Højlund is wallowing in how many figures? How many touches does he even get per season in Manchester United squad? Then another opportunity comes, sign a striker. Same logic. We don't like Watkins because he's too old and he's going to be expensive. There's no resale value. We don't like, what do you call it? Vlahović because he's old. There won't be enough resale value. Yeah, Sesko, he's young. But you already have a 22-year-old striker on your books who you signed for 80 million, and no one would sign for 80 million. No one will even sign for 50 million today. So the whole logic around resale value is so pointless that when you try and justify not signing instant impact in the name of we want to have resale value, you are still going to make a loss on the player anyway. right? Because if the resale
So,
value of the player for a big club like United is going to be really, really high, then the club would not have to sell that player. Like, you think if Højlund is playing at a level where his 100 million price tag is valuable and people are tagging him that way, you think United would be on the striker market looking for a striker? No. So for clubs like
so
United, resale value usually means if it's higher, the club wants to keep the player anyway. So it's a bogus point. Let me rephrase my question for you. Erasmus, did United sign the best striker they had on the market?
I mean, I understand, and I mean, you've already set the pace for the question. There's not much for me to add over here. It looks like you've even already answered the question. But the points that I think my first point still stands. If you look at Højlund, I know within
Oh,
8,000.
Erasmus.
No, let me answer the question. You asked the
Okay,
question. I am to
okay,
answer it.
okay.
So within the Italian league where Højlund
Yeah,
was, we all saw how well he was doing within the league. I'll not say he was
yeah,
tearing up the league numbers wise, but looking at him, he was a striker that even I would have wanted to come to Chelsea. So the
yeah,
question is, like you said, between then and then now, what has happened um for us to now say Højlund is no longer a 79 million euros striker, right? And and the reason I think that's important is because I think that is what is feeding into the perception which is around Sesko. The fact that he's also 22 years old, he's also a prospect and not a fully developed product, and it's coming from a foreign league. Are they repeating the same mistake? So it's important to understand the context. That being said, everything I said still counts, because if you consider the environment in which Rasmus Højlund found himself in, you could say that there was no way he could perform optimally. When he was given the chance, we all saw the run which he went on, but not within the English Premier League. It is a crime to not keep that level of consistency up. So my point was to say that with the improved conditions, they are more likely, or they are more likely to get more out of a 22-year-old prospect now. But secondly, Sesko himself as a prospect, like with regards to the doubts which is around making the decision between him and Watkins, etc. The doubt was about his level of experience. The doubt is whether he can come in and instantly reproduce. And like I said, the conditions have changed, which then counts to making him more of the ideal choice. Because trust me, the reasons why people are refusing a Watkins, which is his age, is very legitimate, because it's not about resale value or not. Like Watkins can come in there and score as many goals, but by January or by next summer, you may need a new striker, right? He may come in, and because of the jump that he's making, what's the level of wages that he would want to demand? Where exactly would he want to play? Does it fit the style, etc.? I think Sesko for me fits the bill of an Amorim striker, which I've already said. Him being young is very crucial also for clubs these days. It's not about the resale value, but for how long you can sign him, for how much money you can give him comparatively to the more established options which are out there. So for me, well, out of all the options, they could all give you different things. But I think that at this point, Sesko probably suits the project, which is funny because at the beginning of the window, we had Manchester United fans laughing at Arsenal fans for going for Sesko, saying that he's unproven, and saying that they will learn from the Haaland situation, the Højlund situation, sorry, because that's what they also went through with Højlund, that they are getting Gyökeres, who is a sharpshooter, etc. Somehow they swapped. And now you can see the fans now saying, you've got Gyökeres and he's so old and he played in the Portuguese league. So these things will go on and on and on. But I, as a panelist, as an objective panelist, I know I have blue lights,
Hey.
but no blue tinted lenses. Need to give you the objective truth, everything that is out there, and be very clear with it. So that's
Chelsea
that's
fan
that's
with
my
blue light. Obviously, you are not here to analyze in the interest of United. But but anyway, I get what you are saying, right? I get the perspective you are coming from. And what I wanted to point out though is that I still don't find all of these reasons like reasonable, like justifiable enough, right? Because per what you are saying, if these are conditions that would fit a 22-year-old coming in and succeeding more, then these are also conditions that are more likely to help Hoyland perform better. So
Agreed.
exactly, why then do you need an additional striker? More importantly, you have two other center forward profiles that are significantly different from the likes of Hoyland. You have Chido Obi, who is much more direct, who is gradually being introduced into the first team, and he seems to be like what do you call it? All these enthusiastic strikers who are introduced into the first team seems to be very sharp, a natural born striker and a goal poacher. But obviously, you need time, you need him to build up and all that. You have Zexi as well. And so for me, I'm thinking of you have three young striker options who are all very, very young, by the way. And so if you are getting another striker option, it's not that United's project is then all of a sudden abandoning young talent. And it's not also that next summer they actually have to look for signing a new striker. You're looking for a striker who would come in, take the responsibility for the 1 or 2 seasons that he will be sharp, take off that heat from the likes of Hoyland, Zegzi, Chido Obi, and give them the room to grow up such that when United loses a match, they are not the ones receiving the backlash for it. But you've brought in a Sesko who, even though is very, very talented, very promising, I've seen some really brilliant goals, is also coming from the German league. The same German league that Sancho came from with huge prospects and couldn't materialize his talent. Similarly, you have Hoyland coming from the Italian league, which is even known to be a lot more physical and a lot more aggressive than the German league. Probably maybe on the levels of physicality, not in terms of pace, but in terms of aggression, probably on the levels of the Premier League. And still, he struggled to fit in. So I'm looking at the the circumstances under which you are signing a new striker, and I'm wondering, will we be sitting here next summer having a similar conversation that we expected Sesko to do better and he's not? And you know the way United fans are. Even though they are sitting 15th, they still think they should be competing for the league. So they are still looking for a striker who will be giving them 25 goals a season. You see,
Yeah.
and for me,
No,
that's where my issues come up.
no, it's completely fair. Like, but you also need to take the if we're talking real life. Of course, if we're talking ideal, everyone has their sense of what the ideal situation is. But
Yeah.
you need to take into account what has also happened within the market within this period. First of all, established strikers like Oli Watkins are not going anywhere. Like Aston Villa has made it very, very clear. It's like they saw very early on that the striker market is really drying up
But
quite quickly.
you know that it was reported at the early start when there was this dilemma between Sesko and Watkins. It was reported that Amorim wanted Watkins, but the club wanted Sesko, obviously for the
Okay, I didn't
project
hear of
and
such
all
report.
that.
I didn't hear of such reports.
I mean, it
I
was
didn't
very
hear of
early
such.
on and it dried up very quickly. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure
no, but
how credible it
I
is,
can
but I can
understand.
see
I can
why.
understand. Yeah, I can understand why. Like you want someone who is like this guy scored 15 goals in a season, like three in a row, 3 seasons in a row. So
Yeah.
he's clearly proven he comes in, he gives you the goals. But given how the transfer situation has evolved, where you've added a Cunha who scored like his goal contributions was above 20. Same with Brian Mbuemo, goal contributions to about 25 behind the striker. You wouldn't expect Sesko to be scoring 25 goals. So that same level of expectation which was on Highlanders would not be on Sesko. So if you then look at the value of then having this player on your hands who you can keep for 5 seasons, 6, 7 seasons, and can become an established number 9, who can also go to and this is where maybe I also respond to your question, because this is a player that would now be embedded into the squad quite slowly and will get his time to develop. And you don't say played in a foreign league, 22-year-old failed. So this one played in a foreign league, 22-year-old will fail. It doesn't work like that. obviously the ceiling for Sesko is way, 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 way higher than that for Højlund, which means that if you give him the
I
adequate time and the
disagree
support
though.
in 2 or 3 seasons, this will become much, much better than a Watkins, because in 2 or 3 seasons, these guys would now be looking for a new striker, and you can't guarantee that you have one who come and have an instant impact. For me,
No,
that's my
so
feeling that we can move on.
you see, I agree with what you are saying. I'm only saying that if what you are saying is really the justification, then I think sticking with Hoyland would have been better, especially for United, who is looking for money to go and sign another midfielder who is going to cost them in the areas of 80 to 100 million. And so, because I'm thinking about this and I'm like, obviously, Hoyland having Acuna and Brian Mbeumo behind him in the 210 positions, having Bruno Fernandes as added quality, having Ahmad who chips in goals, having Patrick Dogu who is now pushing up and in preseason looks like somebody who is going to have a lot of attacking responsibilities in the United system, clearly shows you that United has built a team that if you put Hoyland in the center of that team or at the top of that team, he's not going to feel the same pressure he felt 2 seasons ago and last season. This is also a player who has had.
But like this, no, like just not to. The point is that this Sesko is better than Haaland, is Højlund.
That's where
He's
I
better.
disagree. I don't think he is. I think it's just this bias of having a new player who
Then
has
own
recently
your
been
colors.
doing well, who has been doing well. So, but like the same thing. If we were talking about Hoyland 2 seasons ago, would have said similar things about Hoyland before he had come to United. Would have said similar things. Hoyland has raw pace. He has power. The kind of goals he scores, all different types of goals. Like, what type of reels and compilations don't we see about players anytime they're on the market for signing? It's the same everyday excitement around Sesko. So I don't think it's really fair on Hoyland
Yeah, no,
to judge them
I
on that
can
front.
understand what you are saying, but also at the same time, like it's just hard not to be excited by a player such as
I
Sesko.
mean, I'm not excited for United. They should sit somewhere. But I mean, I am excited to see what that team eventually does. But
Same.
I'm also trying to think about whether or not, if they were going out to spend 85 million, was this the right way to spend it? Right? I'm sort of asking a question away slightly from the football excitement to a more pragmatic point of view. But I get the excitement and the analysis around it as well. Um, Before we move on, though, there are two things around United I want us to discuss. First, we've heard that they are poking around Carlos Baleba. And people are saying,
Baleba.
well, they said that they didn't have money. Jim Ratcliffe came out and granted an interview and said that, you know what, we'll run out of money was it November or September? He, he said the club would have run out of money. Then all of a sudden, United is going around signing players left, right, center. I'm sure they're probably even competing with the likes of Liverpool in the transfer window, trying to sign more players and very, very quality and very expensive players. As well, people are asking, where did they get the money from? And is this like a sign that Radcliffe is the most broke billionaire ever, the most broke rich man, but he still has a lot of room to spend? And where do you think this United team finishing, or where do you see them finishing? Do you really think that they are going to shock people with the performances they'll put in next season?
So I mean, this gives me a leeway to promote another episode which I did with Faithfulness Okom, who is
Yeah,
um, a sports lawyer and has a lot of knowledge about finance within sports. Okay,
yeah,
so I think when I spoke to him also, I did mention that 15th for United, that it's not natural. Like you and I know,
yeah.
like Chelsea, we've gone to 12th before. Like even Liverpool has waddled in the eights before. Everyone has those moments, but that is not where United sits. Like even when they've struggled over the years, they've always been in the top six, sevens, eights, and I think that's where they are going to return again this season. I think that there are other clubs, like as of last season, there were clubs who were peaking, like the Brightons, like the Bournemouths. Even Everton was rising up, right? Like mention them, Aston Villa, like Newcastle. Those guys are much closer to the big boys, but there were clubs which were peaking, who were just overperforming, and United couldn't cope. this season, not to say they are weaker or they won't do anything, but they've had
Yeah.
some of their big players poached by the other big clubs. So I think instantly it improves the Man United squad to be able to grind out games against a lot of these teams anyway. So I think that they are going to return back into top 8, top 7, even if ambitiously top 6, depending on what happens with Newcastle and Aston Villa this season.
Okay.
So I think that
Okay.
they are due to make a comeback. With regards to the finances, that is where things begin to look dodgy. And that is where I really wish like people no, that's where I really wish people are able to uh watch and listen to that episode and understand. Because regardless of what we say about Manchester United, and perhaps we'll do a deeper dive into this. Regardless of whatever
Yeah.
we say about Manchester United, it is a commercially massive, it's a massive commercially
It's a
successful club.
commercial machine.
Yes, it's a commercial machine, which means that their marketing, their sponsorship, and their global reach is still huge enough to bring them the big bucks.
Yeah.
So usually for everyone else, your winnings is commensurate or has a direct relationship with how much of an influence which you have. But the equations differ slightly for Manchester United. For them, the global fan base ensures that they continue to have the inflow of cash and support through the commercial revenue, through some of the brand endorsements, the brand influence, which they're able to get from all over the world. And this becomes important leverage. And this is key. This becomes important leverage in being able to also plan for the future of Manchester United, right? Which means that when they go out to the bank or they go out to the market and they say that we need 200 million, they most likely will get it compared to a Brighton, compared to an Aston Villa or Newcastle, whom we'll be talking about.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
means that the ability to generate revenue is huge. What I think Sir Jim Ratcliffe was complaining about specifically was to do with the cash flow because they had
Ah.
made set commitments over the years. And because they're a commercially successful club, they have financial obligations to the shareholders. They need to give out dividends for the stocks that people are holding with Manchester
Yeah.
United. They need to pay back the debt. And I think we discussed this when we spoke about the Glazers and how much debt they had put on the club.
Yeah.
So, is it at the point where people feel we can no longer give money to Manchester United? I don't think so. I still think that people are still willing to invest because so it's like this. It's like when you borrow money from a friend, right? And then you
Yeah.
pay back. Now the friend is like, oh, cool. Like when I borrow this guy money, he pays back and he even pays with interest. I like
Yeah.
interest. I like more money. So am I going to say, oh, the fact that you are borrowing means you are broke, I won't give you money? No, I'm going to give you. In fact, I'm going to give you more. I want to make you like me and you depend on me because then I'm going to get more interest from you. So I think it's a similar situation where they're able to generate a lot of money from some of these commercial partners, and they're able to generate revenue through their stadium, through some of the brand endorsements and the level of global reach they have, and clearly also with the players because the players look at the brand appeal, and it's very simple because people ask the question, and I'm sure we'll discuss it. Why would Sesko choose Man United over Newcastle? And I just want you to go over to their social media pages. Once
Yeah.
Sesko said, I'm joining Manchester United, see where his level of followership has gone to, tripled
Yeah.
over the last couple of days. Probably even now more than Newcastle's social media followers, which means that, and that helps. That helps, because as a player, think about it. Like, if you play for Manchester United, it means that you have more influence. There are more
More
people who
commercial
know
value.
and support you, which means that a company looks at you and says that, oh, I want this guy in my ad to promote something. I know he reaches more people. They are going to pay you more compared to if you are with a smaller club. Although your name is buzzing, the level of influence which you have to get people to act is much, much smaller. Plus, of course, the historical things like having your name alongside, like if you score 10 goals in a season, they will say Sesko alongside Ole Gunnar Solskjaer for fastest goals that goes. That I'm sorry. That like it goes. It goes like
Are
the
are
first
you
players.
even before I ask even before I ask a more substantial question, are you trying to say Newcastle is a small club? Just say it with your chest so that
No,
the
no, no, no,
Newcastle
no,
fans
no,
will
no, no,
know.
no.
Thanks for listening to this episode and see you on the next one.
No worries.
Thanks for listening to this episode and see you on the next one.